They called him invisible, just another black janitor pushing a mop through Pinnacle Tech's gleaming corridors. When Sam Miller's adoptive father died, CEO Charles Dunham denied his bereavement leave with a dismissive wave, then approved time off for a white employee's pet funeral minutes later. It was supposed to end there. But as whispers spread through the company about Dunham's unusually personal vendetta against a maintenance worker, Sam discovered his demotion to bathroom duty was just the beginning of a story buried for 30 years, one that would force both men to confront questions of identity, privilege, and what truly makes someone a father. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The call came at 4:37 a.m. Sam Miller jolted awake, fumbling in the darkness for his vibrating phone. The voice on the other end was professional, detached. "Mr. Miller, this is Riverside Care Home. I'm very sorry to inform you that your father passed away in his sleep about an hour ago." Sam sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Was he in pain?" "No, sir. The night nurse checked on him at 2 a.m. and he was sleeping peacefully. When she returned at 3:30, he had passed." Sam thanked her mechanically and ended the call. He sat motionless on the edge of his bed, staring at the framed photo on his nightstand. It showed a younger version of himself, maybe 16, standing, proudly next to a tall white man with kind eyes and a weathered face. James Miller had been 60 when he'd adopted Sam from the foster system, taking in a troubled 12-year-old black boy when nobody else would. Now, 12 years later, he was gone. Despite his grief, Sam went through his morning routine. He couldn't afford to miss work. Tuesdays were always short-staffed at Pinnacle Tech, and he needed the money to cover his father's medical bills. By the time he arrived at the gleaming glass tower that housed Pinnacle Tech, Sam had made up his mind. He would work today, then ask HR for bereavement leave to handle the funeral arrangements. The security guard nodded as Sam slipped his janitor's badge through the reader. "Morning, Sam." "Morning, Dave." The morning passed in a fog. Sam went through the motions of his job, emptying trash cans, wiping down surfaces, vacuuming the endless carpeted hallways. Few employees acknowledged his presence. To most of them, he was invisible. At noon, Sam knocked on the frosted glass door of the HR office. Linda Adams looked up from her computer and smiled. She was one of the few people at Pinnacle who actually seemed to see Sam as a human being. "Sam, what can I do for you?" "My father passed away this morning," Sam said quietly. "I need to take bereavement leave. 3 days, starting tomorrow." Linda's face softened with sympathy. "Oh, Sam, I'm so sorry for your loss." She typed something into her computer, then frowned slightly. "According to your file, you're still in your probationary period. You've only been with us for 5 months. Is that a problem?" "Well, company policy states that employees aren't eligible for bereavement leave until after their 6-month review." She hesitated. "But in special circumstances, Mr. Dunham can make exceptions." "How do I ask him?" "I can send a request up to his office, but it might be better if you ask him directly. He's in the building today." The executive floor of Pinnacle Tech occupied the entire 20th story of the building. When the elevator doors opened, Sam stepped into a world that felt entirely different from the floors below. The carpet was thicker, the lighting softer, the artwork expensive. A young receptionist looked up at Sam with confusion. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with Mr. Dunham about bereavement leave." The receptionist frowned. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but Mr. Dunham is very busy. Perhaps you should speak with HR instead." "HR sent me here," Sam said, feeling a flicker of irritation through his grief. "Please, it's important." The woman sighed and made a quick call. "Mr. Dunham can give you 2 minutes. His office is the last door on the right, the door to Charles." Dunham's office was solid oak, imposing and expensive. Sam knocked once, then entered when a voice called, "Come in." Charles Dunham sat behind a massive desk, his attention focused on a tablet. He was in his early 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and the lean physique of someone who paid a personal trainer very well. He looked up at Sam, and for a split second, something flashed across his face. Something that looked almost like recognition, followed quickly by discomfort. Then his expression settled into cool detachment. "You wanted to see me?" Dunham said, not bothering to invite Sam to sit. "Yes, sir. My name is Sam Miller. I work in maintenance." "I can see that," Dunham said, glancing pointedly at Sam's uniform. Sam swallowed his pride. "My father passed away this morning. I need 3 days of bereavement leave to arrange and attend his funeral. HR said I need your approval since I'm still in my probationary period." Dunham leaned back in his chair, studying Sam with an unreadable expression. "When did you start working here, Mr. Miller?" 5 months ago, sir." "And you're already asking for special treatment?" Dunham's voice was cold. "Policies exist for a reason. I understand that, sir, but this is an emergency." "My father—" "We all have responsibilities," Dunham interrupted. "This company is preparing for our biggest product launch of the year. Everyone needs to pull their weight." Sam felt a surge of anger, but forced himself to remain calm. "It's just 3 days, sir, to bury my father. And if I make an exception for you, I'll have to make exceptions for everyone." Dunham picked up his tablet again, clearly ending the conversation. "Request denied. Is there anything else?" Sam stood frozen, unable to believe what he was hearing. "No, sir," he finally managed to say. "Then please close the door on your way out." In the hallway, Sam passed a young white man in a designer suit who nodded to him absently as he knocked on Dunham's door. "Hey, Mr. Dunham," the young man said as he entered. "I hate to ask, but can I take Friday off? My dog has to be put down, and I really want to be there." As the door swung shut behind him, Sam heard Dunham's voice, warm and sympathetic. "Of course. Tyler, take all the time you need." Sam's hands curled into fists at his sides. The rest of the day passed in a haze of grief and anger. Sam went through the motions of his job, barely seeing the endless corridors and offices as he cleaned them. His mind kept returning to his father, to the way James Miller had welcomed a troubled black kid into his home when everyone else had given up on him. By the end of his shift, Sam had made his decision. He would take the days off regardless of what Dunham said. He couldn't miss his father's funeral. As he walked through the lobby, a voice called out behind him, "Miller!" Sam turned to see Charles Dunham striding toward him, flanked by 2 executives. The CEO's face was set in hard lines. "I understand you've been telling people you're taking time off despite my decision," Dunham said. Word traveled fast. In this building, someone must have overheard Sam on the phone with the funeral home. "I have to attend my father's funeral," Sam said, standing his ground. Dunham's eyes narrowed. "Let me be very clear. If you leave without approval, don't bother coming back. There are a dozen people who would be grateful for your job." The threat hung in the air between them. Sam looked into Dunham's cold eyes and saw no compassion there, no understanding. Just the arrogant certainty of a man who had never been denied anything in his life. "I understand," Sam said quietly. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Sam stood at the bus stop, remembering his father's words from years ago. "Sometimes, son, you have to choose what matters most and let everything else go." Sam knew what mattered most. And as the bus pulled up to the curb, he knew exactly what he had to do. The funeral home was quiet, except for the soft instrumental music playing through hidden speakers. Sam sat in the front row, studying his father's face for the last time. James Miller looked peaceful, the lines of pain that had marked his features in his final months now smoothed away. Pastor Williams approached Sam, resting a hand on his shoulder. "It's time, son. Are you ready?" Sam nodded, rising to his feet. He straightened his tie. His father's tie, actually, borrowed from the closet in the small house where he'd grown up. James Miller lived a life of quiet purpose, Pastor Williams began, addressing the gathered mourners. He believed that what matters in this world is not what we take, but what we give. Not what we claim to believe, but how we treat the least among us. When it was Sam's turn to speak, he approached the podium slowly. He had written notes, but now he set them aside. "My father wasn't my father by blood," Sam said, his voice steady despite the emotions churning inside him. "But he was my father in every way that mattered. When I was 12 years old, I was an angry kid who'd been bounced between foster homes. Nobody wanted me. Nobody except James Miller." He looked out at the faces watching him, friends and colleagues of his father, most of them white, many of them elderly. "He adopted me in a world that didn't always love what they saw when they looked at us," Sam continued. "But he taught me that true strength isn't about power over others. It's about standing tall even when the world tries to push you down. It's about doing what's right, even when it costs you." After the service, people lined up to offer condolences. Mrs. Abernathy, their next-door neighbor for 15 years, hugged Sam tightly. "Your daddy was so proud of you," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "Even when you were going through your rough patch, he never lost faith in you. Not for 1 minute." The gathering after the funeral was held at James's house, now Sam's house according to the will. Friends brought food, filling the small living room with the comfortable buzz of conversation and reminiscence. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had gone, Pastor William sat down beside Sam on the porch steps. "Your eulogy was beautiful," the pastor said. "James would have been proud." "I hope so," Sam said. "He left you a letter," Pastor Williams continued, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Asked me to give it to you after the funeral." Sam took the envelope. His name was written on the front in his father's shaky handwriting. When he was alone, Sam opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Sam, if you're reading this, I've gone on ahead of you. Don't be sad for me. I've had a good long life, and the best part of it was being your father. When I first met you, you were so angry at the world, and with good reason. But beneath that anger, I saw strength and intelligence and a capacity for love that took my breath away. Watching you grow into the man you are today has been the greatest privilege of my life. I don't have much to leave you in material terms. The house is yours, of course, though it needs more work than I've been able to give it these past few years. There's a small life insurance policy that should cover the remaining medical bills and give you a little nest egg. But the most important thing I want to leave you is this advice. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. This world will try to put you in a box, to tell you what you're worth based on the color of your skin or the job that you do. Don't you believe it for a second. You are my son, and you were born to rise. All my love." Dad Sam folded the letter carefully and tucked it back into the envelope. He wiped his eyes, looking up at the stars scattered across the night sky. "I'll make you proud, Dad," he whispered. "I promise." The next morning, Sam returned to work. He knew what Charles Dunham had said, that if he left without approval, he shouldn't bother coming back, but Sam refused to be intimidated. He had done what he needed to do, what any son would do. Sam entered the Pinnacle Tech building with his head held high, nodding to Dave, the security guard, as he passed through the lobby. "Sorry about your dad," Dave said quietly. "Heard he was a good man." "The best," Sam agreed, surprised that Dave knew. "Thanks." In the maintenance locker room, Sam changed into his uniform, aware of the unusual silence. The other janitors and maintenance workers avoided making eye contact with him. "What's going on?" Sam asked Rico, who had the locker next to his. Rico glanced around nervously before responding in a low voice. "Dunham's on the warpath, man. He's been asking everyone if they've seen you." Before Sam could respond, the door to the locker room swung open. Linda from HR stood there, her face tight with tension. "Sam," she said, "Mr. Dunham wants to see you in his office, immediately." Sam nodded, straightening his uniform jacket. "I'll head up there now." "No," Linda said, her voice strained. "He wants you to finish your shift first. He says the trash still needs to be emptied whether you're here or not." The message was clear. Dunham was forcing him to complete his menial tasks before facing whatever punishment awaited him. It was a power move, designed to humiliate. "Fine," Sam said, keeping his voice even. "I'll see him at the end of my shift." The day dragged endlessly. Sam went about his duties, aware of the whispers that followed him through the building. Everyone seemed to know that he had defied the CEO's direct order. At 5 p.m., Sam rode the elevator to the 20th floor, still in his janitor's uniform. The receptionist waved him toward Dunham's office, her expression carefully neutral. Charles Dunham was not alone. 2 other people sat in chairs facing his desk, Linda from HR and a man Sam didn't recognize, probably from legal. "Mr. Miller," Dunham said coldly. "So good of you to join us." Sam remained standing just inside the door. "You wanted to see me, sir." "Indeed." Dunham leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "You directly disobeyed my instructions. You abandoned your post without authorization." "I attended my father's funeral," Sam corrected him. Dunham's jaw tightened. "You violated company policy. Under normal circumstances, that would be grounds for immediate termination." Linda shifted uncomfortably in her chair but said nothing. However, Dunham continued, "After consulting with HR and legal, I've decided to show leniency. You will not be terminated. Today." Sam waited, knowing there would be more. "Instead, you are being formally reprimanded. This will go in your permanent file." Dunham pushed a document across the desk. "You're also being reassigned. Effective immediately, you will be responsible for the maintenance of the building's restroom facilities, all 42 of them, across all 20 floors." It was a significant demotion. Instead of handling the general maintenance of the executive and client-facing areas, Sam would now be cleaning toilets. The task was usually split between 3 different maintenance workers on rotation. "Furthermore," Dunham added, his voice cold, "your building access is being restricted. Your badge will now only function during your scheduled hours, and only for the service areas and restrooms." Sam stood very still, his father's words echoing in his mind. "Never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Is that all, sir?" he asked, his voice calm. Something flickered in Dunham's eyes, surprise perhaps that Sam hadn't reacted more strongly. "Yes," Dunham said. "You can go." Sam turned to leave. "Oh, and Miller," Dunham called after him, "I'll be personally inspecting the facilities from now on. I suggest you do a thorough job." In the elevator, Sam pressed the button for the ground floor, his mind surprisingly clear. His father had taught him that true dignity couldn't be taken away. It could only be surrendered. And Sam had no intention of surrendering. When the doors opened in the lobby, he was surprised to see a small group of people waiting for him. Rico was there, along with several other maintenance workers and a few of the security guards, including Dave. "We heard what happened," Rico said. "It's not right, man." Dave nodded in agreement. "Your dad dies and that's how they treat you? That's messed up." Sam was touched by their support, but also concerned. "I appreciate it, guys, but don't put your own jobs at risk for me." "Some things are worth the risk," Dave said firmly. As the group dispersed, a young man approached Sam. He was black, maybe 22 or 23, dressed in the smart casual attire of Pinnacle's tech staff. His employee badge identified him as Jordan Taylor, technical intern. "I don't know if you remember me," Jordan said. "We met in the cafeteria a couple months back. You helped me clean up when I spilled my coffee everywhere." Sam nodded, vaguely, recalling the incident. "I heard what happened with Dunham," Jordan continued, his voice low. "It's not the first time he's pulled something like this, especially with black employees. But no one ever calls him on it because he's so careful to make it look like it's about policy and not about race." Sam studied the younger man's face. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because someone needs to document what's happening here," Jordan said intensely. "And I think that someone might be me." He glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I've been keeping notes, dates, times, incidents, building a case." "A case for what?" Sam asked. "I'm not sure yet," Jordan admitted, "but I know wrong when I see it. And what Dunham did to you? That was wrong." Sam thought about his father's letter, safely tucked away in his apartment. "Never let anyone make you feel less than you are." "Maybe you're right," he said slowly. Maybe. It's time someone stood up to Charles Dunham. That night, Sam sat at his kitchen table, a small cardboard box in front of him. It contained the few personal items his father had kept at the care home: his watch, his reading glasses, a dog-eared copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and a manila folder labeled simply Sam. Curious, Sam opened the folder. Inside were the various documents related to his adoption: court papers, social services reports, letters from his father to the adoption agency. But beneath those familiar papers was something unexpected: an old photograph, its edges worn with handling. The photo showed two boys, one white, one black, standing in front of a large house. The white boy looked about 16 with dark hair and a sullen expression. The black boy was younger, maybe 10 or 11, his smile tentative, uncertain. Behind them stood an older white couple, their faces stern and unsmiling. Sam stared at the photo in confusion. He had never seen it before, had no idea who these people were or why his father would have kept this picture. He turned the photo over. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, "For my son, CD." CD. The initials nagged at him, familiar somehow, and then it hit him. Charles Dunham. Could it be possible? Sam looked more closely at the white teenager in the photo. The resemblance was there, once you knew to look for it. The same sharp jawline, the same calculating eyes. Why would his father have a photograph of Charles Dunham as a teenager? And who was the black boy standing beside him? Sam felt a chill run down his spine. There was more to the story of Charles Dunham than he knew, more to his own story, perhaps. And something told him that finding the truth might be both dangerous and necessary. He carefully placed the photograph back in the folder, his mind racing. Tomorrow he would show it to Jordan. Together, maybe they could begin to unravel whatever secret connected Sam's past to the man who now held his future in contempt. "You sure about this?" Jordan asked, leaning forward in his chair at the small coffee shop 3 blocks from Pinnacle Tech. Sam slid the photograph across the table. "I found it in my father's things. That's definitely Charles Dunham as a teenager." Jordan studied the faded image, his brow furrowed in concentration. "And you have no idea who the black kid standing next to him is?" "None," Sam admitted. "But my father kept this hidden for a reason. And look at the back." Jordan flipped the photo over, reading the inscription. "For my son, CD." He let out a low whistle. "This is wild, man. You think Dunham and your dad knew each other?" "I don't know what to think," Sam said, taking back the photo and tucking it carefully into his wallet. "But I need answers." The past week had been grueling. True to his word, Charles Dunham had reassigned Sam to bathroom duty across all 20 floors of Pinnacle Tech. The work itself wasn't the problem. Sam had never been afraid of honest labor. It was the deliberate humiliation that stung. Dunham had made a point of conducting inspections while Sam was on his knees scrubbing toilets, making snide remarks about attention to detail, while executives looked on uncomfortably. "I've been doing some digging," Jordan said, pulling out his laptop. "Public records, old news stories. There's not much, but I found something interesting." He turned the screen toward Sam. The article was from 30 years ago, a small piece in the business section of a local newspaper. "Dunham Foundation faces scrutiny over adoption program." Sam read quickly, his heart pounding. The article was vague, mentioning only that the charitable foundation run by William and Margaret Dunham, Charles's parents, had been questioned about irregularities in an adoption program they had sponsored. The program had allegedly facilitated the adoption of black children into white families during the 1980s and early 1990s. "You think I might have been part of this program?" Sam asked. Jordan shrugged. "It's possible. The dates line up. But there's more." He pulled up another document, a court filing from 1994. It showed that several adoption records tied to the Dunham Foundation had been sealed by court order, a move that effectively buried whatever had happened. If your adoption records were sealed, that could explain why there's no paper trail connecting you to the Dunhams, Jordan said. Sam sat back, trying to process this information. But why would my father have a picture of Charles Dunham? And who wrote that inscription? I don't know, but we need to find out. Jordan closed his laptop. Can you get me your original birth certificate? That might give us somewhere to start. I don't have it, Sam said. I've never seen it. All I have is the amended one from after the adoption. Then we need to request it from vital records. And, if it's sealed, Jordan's expression hardened. Then we find another way in. The next day at work, Sam was cleaning the executive floor restroom when the door swung open. He expected to see Charles Dunham, ready with another cutting remark. Instead, a woman in her 60s entered, dressed in an impeccable gray suit. She stopped short when she saw Sam. "I'm sorry," she said. "I thought this was empty." "No problem, ma'am," Sam replied, rising to his feet. "I was just finishing up." The woman studied him with an intensity that made Sam uncomfortable. "You're Sam Miller, aren't you?" Sam froze. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Margaret Calloway, VP of Legal." She extended her hand. "I've heard about you." Sam hesitated before shaking her hand, leaving a damp spot on her palm from his rubber gloves. "Sorry about that." "No need to apologize." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I knew your father, you know." "My father?" Sam's heart skipped a beat. "James Miller. We served on a community board together years ago." She paused. "He was a good man. I was sorry to hear of his passing." "Thank you," Sam said, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Ms." Calloway glanced toward the door, as if checking they were still alone. "Mr. Dunham has been particularly interested in your case. May I ask why?" Sam chose his words carefully. "I attended my father's funeral against his orders. He didn't appreciate that." "I see." Ms. Calloway nodded slowly. "Charles Dunham is a man with many secrets, Mr. Miller. Secrets he's desperate to keep buried." She moved toward the door, then turned back. "If I were looking for answers, I might check the 1984 adoption records, if I could access them." Before Sam could respond, she was gone, leaving him staring after her in confusion. Why would a VP of Legal be giving him cryptic advice about adoption records, and why mention 1984 specifically? That evening, Sam met with Jordan again, this time at the city library. They had spent hours researching online, trying to find a connection between the Dunham Foundation and James Miller. So far, they had come up empty. "What if we're overthinking this?" Jordan said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Maybe your dad just happened to have a photo of the Dunhams. Maybe there's no connection to you at all." Sam shook his head. "No. Ms. Calloway wouldn't have mentioned 1984 adoption records if there wasn't something there. And why would my father keep this photo hidden all these years?" "Fair point." Jordan tapped his fingers on the table thoughtfully. "Let's try a different angle. What do we know about the Dunham Foundation?" "Not much. It was some kind of charitable organization run by Charles's parents. Supposedly did a lot of work with underprivileged kids." "Right. But what if it wasn't just charity?" Jordan leaned forward. "What if they were using their foundation to handle problems?" "What kind of problems?" "The kind rich families pay a lot of money to make go away." Jordan's voice dropped lower. "Like unwanted pregnancies, inconvenient children, especially if those children might damage the family's reputation." The implication hung in the air between them. Sam felt a chill run down his spine. "You think I might be related to the Dunhams somehow?" "I think it's worth finding out." Jordan closed his laptop. "And I think I know how we can get access to those sealed records." The next morning, Sam arrived at work to find the building in an unusual state of tension. Employees were gathered in small groups, whispering among themselves. When Sam entered the break room to fill his cleaning cart with supplies, conversations abruptly stopped. "What's going on?" he asked Rico, who was refilling the coffee machine. Rico glanced around nervously before responding. "Dunham collapsed during a board meeting yesterday afternoon. Some kind of health emergency. They took him to the hospital." "Is he okay?" "I heard it was his heart. Been having problems for a while, apparently. Rico shrugged. Not that anyone's shedding tears. The guy's a nightmare to work for. Sam processed this information silently. Charles Dunham had seemed the picture of health. Arrogant, untouchable. The idea that he had physical vulnerabilities was somehow jarring. As Sam went about his duties that day, he noticed something else. With Dunham temporarily out of the picture, people were talking more freely. Rumors and complaints that had been whispered were now being discussed openly in break rooms and corridors. It seemed Charles Dunham's iron grip on the company was slipping. "Sam." Jordan's urgent voice interrupted his thoughts as he was mopping the third-floor hallway. The young intern was out of breath as if he'd been running. "I found something. Big." "Not here," Sam said quietly, glancing at the security camera in the corner of the hallway. "Meet me at the usual place after work." Jordan nodded and hurried away, leaving Sam to wonder what revelation awaited him. The coffee shop was crowded when Sam arrived that evening, forcing them to take a table near the back. Jordan was already there, practically vibrating with nervous energy. "I got access," he said without preamble. "To the adoption records?" Sam asked, keeping his voice low. "Not exactly, but I found financial records from the Dunham Foundation. Public filings, tax documents, the stuff they couldn't hide." Jordan slid a folder across the table. In 1984, they made a series of payments to a private adoption agency called New Beginnings. One of the payments coincides exactly with your birthday. Sam opened the folder, staring at the highlighted figures. "This doesn't prove anything." "Keep reading." 6 months after that payment, they made another one, to James Miller. Sam's head snapped up. "What?" $50,000, officially listed as an education grant for disadvantaged youth programs. "But the timing makes it look like they paid my father to adopt me," Sam finished, his stomach turning. "But why? Who am I to them?" Jordan hesitated. "I think I might know. There's one more document in there." Sam flipped to the last page in the folder. It was a newspaper clipping, a society page announcement from 1982. "William and Margaret Dunham are pleased to announce the engagement of their son, Charles William Dunham, to Catherine Elizabeth Reynolds." Below that, Jordan had written a note. "Catherine Reynolds dropped out of college suddenly in late 1983. No explanation given. She died in a car accident in 1985. The implications hit Sam like a physical blow. "You think Catherine Reynolds was my mother, that Charles Dunham? Had a relationship with a black woman in the early 80s, got her pregnant, and then his parents used their foundation to hide the evidence." Jordan nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I think." Sam leaned back in his chair, feeling as though the ground had shifted beneath him. If Jordan was right, then Charles Dunham, the man who had humiliated him, who had denied him the right to attend his father's funeral, might be his biological father. "I need proof," Sam said finally. "Real proof, not just circumstantial evidence." "I know." Jordan reached into his backpack and pulled out a small box. "That's why I got this." It was a DNA testing kit, the kind that could reveal the truth of Sam's parentage once and for all. "Are you sure about this?" Jordan asked. "Once we know, we can't unknow." Sam stared at the box, thinking of his father, his real father, James Miller, and the life they had shared. Whatever Charles Dunham might be to him biologically, he could never take that away. "I'm sure," Sam said, taking the box. "It's time for the truth." The week after Sam submitted his DNA test was one of the longest of his life. Jordan had used his connections to expedite the results, but each day felt like an eternity. Sam went through the motions at work, cleaning bathrooms and emptying trash cans, all while carrying the weight of what he might soon discover. Charles Dunham had returned to the office, but rumors of his health problems persisted. He looked paler than before, thinner somehow, and his legendary temper had grown even worse. Twice, Sam had overheard him shouting at executives through closed doors. "He's scared," Jordan commented when they met for lunch in a park across from Pinnacle Tech. "Something's got him rattled." "Besides his heart condition?" Sam asked. "I think it's more than that." Jordan lowered his voice. People are talking. There's been some weird financial stuff happening at Pinnacle. Contracts that don't make sense. Money moving around. And now Charles is acting paranoid. You think someone's investigating the company? Maybe. Jordan shrugged. Or maybe he's worried about what we might find. It was possible, Sam realized, that Charles knew exactly who he was. Had always known. That would explain his immediate dislike. His determination to keep Sam in his place. But it didn't explain why James Miller had never told Sam the truth, or why he'd kept that photograph hidden all these years. 3 days later, Sam was cleaning the executive bathroom when the door burst open. Charles Dunham stood there, his face flushed with anger. "You!" he snarled, pointing a finger at Sam. "Your friend Jordan. He's been accessing company files without authorization." Sam straightened up slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb with me." Dunham's voice was low and dangerous. "I know you two are up to something, and it stops now. Is there a problem here?" Ms. Calloway appeared in the doorway behind Dunham, her expression unreadable. Dunham turned, clearly startled by her presence. "This doesn't concern you, Margaret." "If you're harassing an employee, it most certainly does concern me." Her voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "The board is already concerned about your recent outbursts, Charles. Perhaps you should focus on your recovery rather than creating new problems." The threat was subtle but clear. Charles glared at her for a long moment before storming out, brushing past her without another word. Ms. Calloway watched him go, then turned back to Sam. "Be careful, Mr. Miller. Charles is not a man who likes to be cornered." She paused. "Did you look into what we discussed?" "I did," Sam said cautiously. "We're still waiting on confirmation." She nodded. "When you have it, come find me. You'll need allies." With that, she followed Dunham down the hallway, leaving Sam alone with his thoughts. That afternoon, Jordan was called to Charles Dunham's office. He returned 30 minutes later, his expression grim. "I've been fired," he told Sam when they met outside the building. "Unauthorized access to company systems. He had security escort me out." "I'm sorry," Sam said, feeling guilty. "This is my fault." Jordan shook his head. "No way. I chose to help you, and I'm not stopping now." "But what will you do? You needed that internship." "I'll figure something out." Jordan managed a smile. "Besides, I've still got friends inside, and I just got a text. Your results are in." Sam's heart skipped a beat. "And?" "I haven't looked." "This is your journey, Sam. You should be the one to see them first." They walked to a nearby cafe, where Jordan handed Sam his laptop. The DNA testing company's website was already open, showing a secure message waiting in Sam's account. With shaking hands, Sam clicked to open it. The results were clear, presented in clinical, impersonal language. 99.9% probability of paternal relationship. Charles William Dunham was, without question, Sam's biological father. Sam stared at the screen, a strange numbness spreading through him. He had suspected it, had prepared himself for it, but seeing the confirmation still felt like a punch to the gut. "It's true," he said finally, turning the laptop so Jordan could see. "He's my father." Jordan let out a low whistle. "So what now?" "Now, we find out why he abandoned me, why my mother died, why James Miller never told me the truth." Sam closed the laptop with a decisive click. "And why Charles Dunham has spent a lifetime pretending I don't exist." The next day, a bombshell dropped. Someone, Sam suspected Jordan, though he denied it, had leaked security footage from inside Pinnacle Tech. The grainy video showed Charles Dunham in the executive lounge, laughing with several other executives. "You should have seen his face," Dunham said in the footage, clearly referring to Sam. "Begging for time off for a funeral, like I care about some janitor's dead father." "Cold, man," one of the executives commented. "Please," Dunham scoffed. "These people are always looking for special treatment. They need to learn their place." The racial undertones were impossible to miss. Within hours, the video had gone viral, sparking outrage on social media. Pinnacle Bigot began trending, along with calls for a boycott of Pinnacle Tech products. Sam watched it all unfold from the sidelines, feeling strangely disconnected. The man being vilified online was his biological father, a father who had rejected him not once but twice, first at birth and then again when Sam had needed a simple act of compassion. As the scandal grew, reporters began digging into Charles Dunham's past. They uncovered previous discrimination complaints that had been quietly settled, racist comments made at industry events, a pattern of behavior that had been concealed behind Pinnacle's polished corporate facade. Through it all, Sam continued to show up for work, cleaning bathrooms as assigned. He noticed that people looked at him differently now, with sympathy, with curiosity, sometimes with a kind of awkward respect. He had become, unwittingly, a symbol of corporate racism and classism. On the third day after the video leak, Sam received a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Harrison Park, 7 p.m. Come alone. It's about your mother. MC Margaret Calloway." Sam debated whether to go, then decided he had nothing to lose. The park was public, safe, and he desperately wanted to know about his mother. Ms. Calloway was sitting on a bench near the duck pond, looking smaller somehow without her corporate armor. She nodded when she saw Sam approach. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Please, sit." Sam sat beside her, waiting. "I knew your mother," Ms. Calloway began without preamble. "Catherine Reynolds was brilliant, top of our class at Stanford. She and Charles met during her junior year, when he was already working for his father's company." "They had a relationship?" Sam asked. "They were in love," Ms. Calloway said simply. "Or at least Catherine was. For Charles, I think it was rebellion. Dating a black woman was the ultimate way to defy his racist parents. And then she got pregnant." Ms. Calloway nodded. "When she told Charles, he panicked. His parents were grooming him to take over their empire. A mixed-race child with a black woman would have derailed everything. So he abandoned her." Sam's voice was flat. "Not immediately. First, he tried to convince her to terminate the pregnancy. When she refused, he went to his parents for help." Ms. Calloway's voice hardened. "That's when things got truly ugly." "What happened?" "William and Margaret Dunham were powerful people with old money and old prejudices. They couldn't risk their son's future being tainted, their word, not mine, by an illegitimate mixed-race child. So they made arrangements." She sighed. "Catherine was paid to disappear until the baby was born. The child, you, would be placed with a suitable family through their foundation. Everything would be kept quiet, and my mother agreed to this?" Sam couldn't keep the hurt from his voice. "No. She wanted to keep you, but she had no money, no support. Charles had abandoned her, threatened her with legal action if she tried to name him as the father." Ms. Calloway looked away. In the end, she felt she had no choice. "And James Miller? How did he fit into all this?" James was different. He was a teacher who had worked with the Dunham Foundation before. He'd seen how they operated and didn't like it. "When he learned about your situation, he volunteered to adopt you, but on his terms. He refused their money initially. He wanted a real adoption, not some shady arrangement. But the financial records show they paid him. Later, yes. After your mother died." Ms. Calloway's eyes filled with tears. "That car accident wasn't really an accident, Sam. Catherine had started talking about reclaiming her child, about exposing the Dunhams. A week later, she was dead." Sam felt sick. "Are you saying they had her killed?" "I'm saying nothing happens by coincidence when the Dunhams feel threatened." Ms. Calloway stood up. "After Catherine died, James got scared. He took their money, not for himself but for your education fund. He made them sign legal documents ensuring they could never take you away from him. And he never told me any of this. He was protecting you the only way he knew how." She placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. "James Miller loved you, Sam. Never doubt that. And he was a braver man than Charles Dunham could ever hope to be." She handed Sam an envelope. "This belongs to you. It's a letter your mother wrote for you before you were born. James gave it to me for safekeeping in case anything ever happened to him. Sam took the envelope with trembling hands. Why are you helping me? Because I stood by and watched this happen 30 years ago, and I've regretted my silence every day since. Ms. Calloway's voice was firm. It's time for the truth, Sam. All of it. As she walked away, Sam opened the envelope. Inside was a faded letter and a small photograph of a beautiful young black woman with his eyes and smile. His mother, the woman Charles Dunham had erased from history. He read the letter twice, tears streaming down his face. It was filled with love, with hopes for his future, with a mother's dreams for her unborn child. It ended with a simple promise. No matter what happens, know that you were loved. Deeply, completely loved. Sam carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope with the photograph. For years, he had thought of himself as unwanted, a child nobody had chosen until James Miller came along. Now he knew differently. He had been wanted, had been loved, and the man who had rejected him, twice, was going to finally face the consequences of his actions. That night, Sam called Jordan. I'm ready, he said. It's time to tell the world who Charles Dunham really is. Are you sure? Jordan asked. Once we do this, there's no going back. Sam thought of his mother's letter, of his adoptive father's quiet dignity, of the life he might have had if Charles Dunham had made different choices. I'm sure, he said. The truth has been buried long enough. We need a strategy, Jordan said, spreading documents across the table in his small apartment. We can't just go public with accusations. Dunham will bury us. Sam nodded, studying the growing pile of evidence they'd assembled. The DNA test results, his mother's letter, financial records from the Dunham Foundation, the photograph of young Charles Dunham with that unidentified black child. It was compelling, but was it enough? What about Ms. Calloway? Sam asked. She seems willing to help. She's helpful, but risky, Jordan countered. She's still a Pinnacle executive. We need someone with no connections to Dunham, someone he can't intimidate or buy off. Like a journalist? Jordan snapped his fingers. Exactly. Someone with a platform and resources to investigate properly. He pulled out his laptop. I know. Just the person. Elise Carter's name appeared on the screen. Her photo showed a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense expression. According to her bio, she was an investigative reporter who specialized in corporate misconduct and racial discrimination cases. She broke the story on that tech startup that was systematically underpaying black employees, Jordan explained. Dunham hates her. He banned her from all Pinnacle press events. That sounds promising, Sam agreed. How do we contact her? Already. Working on it. Jordan typed rapidly. I know someone who knows her. Getting us a meeting might take a few days, though. Those few days turned into the longest week of Sam's life. He continued going to work, cleaning bathrooms under the hostel. Gaze of Charles Dunham, who seemed increasingly agitated. The viral video had created a PR nightmare for Pinnacle Tech, with protesters gathering outside the company headquarters daily. Despite the mounting pressure, Dunham showed no signs of backing down. If anything, he had become more aggressive, firing 3 employees who had been seen talking to reporters about the company's culture. Finally, on Friday evening, Jordan texted Sam. Meeting with Carter. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Coffee shop on Maple. Sam arrived early, nervously sipping his coffee. As he waited, Jordan showed up minutes later, followed by a sharp-eyed woman carrying a battered leather messenger bag. Sam Miller, Elise Carter said, offering her hand. I've heard quite a story about you. Thank you for meeting with us, Sam replied. Don't thank me yet, Elise cautioned, sitting down. Jordan has shared the outlines, but I need to hear everything from you directly, and I need to see your evidence. For the next hour, Sam talked. He told her about his adoptive father's death, Dunham's, callous refusal of bereavement leave, the subsequent demotion. He shared his discovery of the photograph, the investigation with Jordan, and finally, the DNA test confirming Charles Dunham was his biological father. Elise listened without interruption, taking occasional notes. When Sam finished, She studied him carefully. You realize what you're alleging? That one of the most powerful men in tech abandoned his black girlfriend and unborn child, then spent decades actively undermining that child when he reappeared in his life. Yes, Sam said simply. And you believe his family may have been involved in your birth mother's death? I don't know for certain, but the timing is suspicious. Elise nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's a compelling story, and the DNA evidence is solid. But Dunham will fight this with everything he has. Are you prepared for that? Sam thought of his father, James Miller, and what he would say in this moment. Do what's right, even when it costs you. I am, he said firmly. Good. Elise reached into her bag and pulled out a digital recorder. Then let's make this official. Over the next few days, Elise dove into the investigation with remarkable thoroughness. She verified the DNA results independently, tracked down former employees of the Dunham Foundation, and began piecing together the timeline of events surrounding Catherine Reynolds' pregnancy and death. Meanwhile, Jordan began working with a group of current and former Pinnacle employees who had experienced discrimination under Dunham's leadership. Together, they documented dozens of incidents, building a pattern of behavior that spanned decades. The turning point came unexpectedly during Sam's regular shift at Pinnacle. He was cleaning the executive floor when Charles Dunham's assistant, a woman named Vanessa, approached him cautiously. Mr. Miller, she said, her voice low. I need to speak with you. Privately. Sam followed her to a secluded corner of the floor, away from security cameras. I've worked for Mr. Dunham for 8 years, Vanessa said, nervously glancing around. I've seen things. Done things I'm not proud of. What kind of things? Sam asked. Destroyed documents? Altered records? She swallowed hard. Last week, after that video leaked, he had me delete a whole series of emails from the company server. Emails about you. Sam's pulse quickened. What did they say? They were from years ago, when you first applied to work here. Mr. Dunham recognized your name. He had me run a background check, confirm you were James Miller's son. Vanessa looked down. When he found out, he specifically requested you be assigned to the lowest position possible. Can you prove this? A slight smile crossed Vanessa's face. I delete nothing permanently. I have backups of everything. Sam immediately contacted Elise, who arranged to meet with Vanessa that evening. The emails she provided were damning, clear, evidence that Charles Dunham had recognized Sam's name and deliberately worked to keep him in a subservient position. This changes everything, Elise told Sam the next day. These emails show knowledge and intent. Combined with the DNA evidence and Ms. Calloway's testimony, we have a solid story. When do we go public? Sam asked. I need a few more days to verify some details about your mother's death. But we're close. Elise paused. There's something else you should know. My sources tell me Dunham is getting desperate. He knows something's coming. What does that mean for us? It means be careful. Men like Dunham don't surrender power easily. Elise's warning proved prescient. The very next day, Sam was called to the HR office. Linda looked uncomfortable as she slid a document across the desk. What's this? Sam asked, not touching the paper. A severance agreement, Linda said, not meeting his eyes. The company is offering 6 months' salary if you leave voluntarily. Today. Sam stared at the document. And if I refuse? Mr. Dunham didn't discuss alternatives. Linda's discomfort was palpable. Sam, off the record. Take the money and run. Things are about to get ugly around here. Sam stood up. No thanks, I'm not going anywhere. As he walked back to the maintenance area, Sam's phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. Dunham knows we're working with Elise. Someone leaked. Be careful. That evening, Sam received an unexpected summons to Charles Dunham's office. Against Jordan and Elise's advice, he decided to go. This might be his only chance to confront the man face to face before the story broke. The executive floor was eerily quiet when Sam arrived. Even the receptionist was gone, her desk abandoned. The door to Dunham's office stood partially open. spilling light into the darkened hallway. Sam knocked once, then entered. Charles Dunham sat behind his massive desk, looking smaller somehow than Sam remembered. The weeks of scandal and stress had taken their toll. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed. "Miller," Dunham said, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. "Sit down." Sam remained standing. "You wanted to see me?" Dunham sighed, pushing a thick envelope across the desk. $200,000. Cash. Walk away now and it's yours. No questions asked. "You're trying to buy my silence," Sam said. Flatly. "I'm offering you a way out. For both of us." Dunham's voice hardened. "That reporter you're working with, Carter, she's not interested in truth. She wants a scalp. My scalp. She wants justice." "Justice?" Dunham laughed bitterly. "There's no justice in destroying a man's life work over mistakes made 30 years ago." "Mistakes?" Sam's voice rose despite his efforts to stay calm. "Is that what you call abandoning your pregnant girlfriend? Denying your own child?" "You don't understand what it was like," Dunham snapped. "My parents—" "Don't blame your parents," Sam cut him off. "You were an adult. You made your choices." A heavy silence fell between them. Dunham stood up slowly, moving to the window that overlooked the city lights. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally, his back to Sam. "An apology? Money? A job?" "I want the truth," Sam said simply. "For 30 years, you've hidden who I am, who my mother was. I want the world to know." Dunham turned, his expression suddenly calculating. "And if I go public myself? Make a statement, acknowledge you, set up some kind of trust fund?" "Too late," Sam replied. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about every person you've stepped on climbing to the top, every life you've damaged with your prejudice and arrogance." Dunham's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Miller. I have resources you can't imagine, friends in places you've never heard of. This won't end well for you." "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." Dunham returned to his desk, his composure regained. "You're dismissed." Sam stood his ground. "One more thing. Did you know who I was when I came to ask for bereavement leave?" A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed Dunham's face before his expression hardened again. "Get out of my office." Sam left without another word, the encounter replaying in his mind. Dunham hadn't denied knowing who he was, which meant he had deliberately denied his own son the chance to bury his adoptive father with dignity. The next morning, Sam arrived at work to find the entire maintenance department gathered in their break room. Rico approached him immediately. "Sam, have you seen the news?" "What news?" Rico held up his phone, showing a breaking business story. "Pinnacle Tech CEO Charles Dunham takes immediate medical leave of absence." "When did this happen?" Sam asked, scanning the article. "Late last night. Word is he's flying to some private clinic in Switzerland." Rico lowered his voice. "People are saying he's running away before something big breaks." Sam immediately called Jordan, who confirmed the story. "Elise is trying to track his movements. If he leaves the country, it could complicate everything." "When is she publishing?" "Monday morning, 3 days from now." Jordan paused. "Unless we can convince her to move faster." "I'll talk to her," Sam promised. Elise agreed to meet them that afternoon in the park across from Pinnacle Tech. She looked tired but determined as she explained her position. "I understand the urgency, but I won't rush this story. It's too important to get wrong." She held up her hand as Jordan started to argue. 2 more days to verify every detail. That's non-negotiable." "And if Dunham disappears in those 2 days?" Sam asked. "He won't get far," Elise assured him. "Not with what I've uncovered." The next day, Saturday, Ms. Calloway contacted Sam with alarming news. "Dunham is liquidating assets," she told him, "transferring money offshore, and he's booked a private jet to leave Monday morning." "He's running," Sam realized. "Yes, but there's more." Ms. Calloway's voice was tight with urgency. "I found documents in his private files, evidence that he knew about your mother's accident before it happened. I can't prove he arranged it, but he knew, Sam finished, a cold certainty settling in his chest. What time does his plane leave? Monday, 8 a.m., a private airfield outside the city. Sam called Jordan and Elise immediately. We need to move now, today. The story isn't ready, Elise protested. Then we'll create a new story, Sam said, an idea forming, one Dunham can't escape from. Sunday dawned clear and cold. Sam, Jordan, and Elise gathered near the entrance to the private airfield where Charles Dunham's jet waited. They had arrived hours early, concealing Elise's car behind a maintenance shed at the edge of the property. Are we sure he's coming? Jordan asked, stamping his feet against the morning chill. Ms. Calloway confirmed it, Sam replied. He moved his flight up. He'll be here within the hour. And you're certain you want to do this? Elise asked, checking her recording equipment one last time. Once we start, there's no going back. Sam nodded, thinking of his mother's letter, of James Miller's quiet dignity, of all the people Charles Dunham had hurt over the years. I'm sure, he said. They didn't have to wait long. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the security gate at 6:45 a.m. Charles Dunham emerged from the back seat, looking haggard and tense. He spoke briefly with the security guard, then proceeded toward the private terminal building. Now, Sam said, and the three of them moved quickly from their hiding place. Dunham saw them coming and froze momentarily before turning to hurry toward the terminal. But Sam called out, his voice carrying across the quiet airfield. Running away, Mr. Dunham. Dunham stopped, turning slowly to face them. His expression shifted from surprise to anger to something like resignation. This is private property, he said, his voice lacking its usual authority. You're trespassing. We just want to talk, Sam replied, approaching cautiously. Before you disappear to Switzerland. Dunham's eyes narrowed. I have nothing to say to you. Not even to your son? The words hung in the cold morning air. Dunham glanced nervously at Elise, recognizing her immediately. Whatever she's told you, Miller, it's lies. She's been trying to destroy me for years. The DNA test wasn't a lie, Sam countered. 99.9% match. You are my biological father. Something crumbled in Dunham's expression. For a moment, he looked older, smaller. Just a man facing the consequences of his choices. What do you want from me? He asked, echoing their conversation in his office days earlier. The truth. All of it. Right here, right now. Dunham glanced toward the terminal, where his pilot had appeared in the doorway, watching the confrontation with concern. I have a plane to catch, he said, turning away. Did you know my mother was going to die? Sam called after him. Dunham stopped dead in his tracks. Ms. Calloway found the documents, Sam continued. You were warned about the accident before. It happened. Dunham turned back slowly, his face pale. You don't understand what happened. Then explain it to me. Sam gestured to a nearby bench. Last chance to tell your side. For a long moment, Dunham stood frozen, clearly weighing his options. Then, with a defeated slump of his shoulders, he moved to the bench and sat down heavily. My parents, he began, his voice low. They controlled everything. My future, the company, their money. He looked up at Sam. When Catherine told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I was 22, ambitious, terrified of disappointing them. So you abandoned her, Sam said flatly. Told my father, thinking he'd help somehow. Instead, he took over completely. Dunham's face twisted with old anger. He treated it like a business problem. Catherine would be paid off, the baby adopted by a suitable family, and everything kept quiet. And you just went along with it? I was a coward, Dunham admitted, his voice barely audible. I told myself it was for the best, that the child, you, would have a better life without the complications of our family. What about when my mother threatened to go public, to reclaim me? Dunham's face paled further. My father handled that. He never told me the details, just that Catherine had seen reason, and wouldn't be a problem anymore. He swallowed hard. A week later, she was dead. I suspected, but I never knew for certain. Not until years later when I found documents in his safe after he died. And you kept quiet, Sam said, disgust evident in his voice. Protected your family's legacy. Yes. The single word seemed to cost Dunham enormous effort. What about me? Did you ever think about me? I tried not to. Dunham couldn't meet Sam's eyes. But then you showed up at Pinnacle, with James Miller's name, and I knew immediately who you were. You have her eyes. And you decided to punish me, Sam said. Assign me to the lowest position. Deny me bereavement leave when my father, my real father, died. I was afraid, Dunham admitted. Afraid you somehow knew the truth. Afraid of the scandal if it came out. Afraid of a janitor? Sam's voice dripped with scorn. Dunham finally looked up, meeting Sam's gaze. Afraid of my son. The living proof of my greatest shame. Behind Sam, Elise's camera captured every word, every expression. Jordan stood nearby, recording audio on his phone as backup. Tell me about my mother, Sam said, his voice softening slightly. What was she like? A ghost of a smile touched Dunham's lips. Brilliant, stubborn, full of ideas about changing the world. He shook his head. She deserved better than me. Why didn't you just fire me when I started at Pinnacle? Why keep me around if you were so afraid? I don't know, Dunham admitted. Maybe some twisted sense of penance. Maybe I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become despite everything. He paused. Or maybe I just couldn't bring myself to cast you out a second time. A tense silence fell between them. In the distance, the pilot called that they were cleared for takeoff. I need to go, Dunham said, standing up. If you get on that plane, Sam warned, the story breaks with or without your side. Ms. Calloway has agreed to testify. Your assistant has provided emails. The DNA evidence is conclusive. Dunham hesitated, visibly weighing his options. What do you want? Money? A position in the company? I want justice, Sam said simply. For my mother, for every employee you've mistreated because of their race, for myself. And what does justice look like to you? Public acknowledgement, a full investigation into my mother's death, compensation for the employees you've discriminated against, and your resignation from Pinnacle Tech. Dunham laughed bitterly. You want everything I've built. I want you to take responsibility for once in your life, Sam countered. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but at that moment several cars pulled up to the security gate. News vans, their satellite dishes visible even from a distance. You planned this, Dunham realized, glancing from the approaching reporters to Elise's camera. You taught me something valuable, Mr. Dunham, Sam replied. Always be prepared. Charles, Dunham stared at his biological son for a long moment. Then, with a defeated slump of his shoulders, he sat back down on the bench. I'll tell them everything, he said quietly. But not because you forced me. Because it's time. He looked up at Sam, something like respect in his eyes. You're more like your mother than you know. As the reporters approached, cameras ready, Sam felt a strange mix of emotions. Not triumph, exactly. Not even satisfaction. Just a quiet certainty that the truth, so long buried, was finally coming to light. Charles Dunham faced the cameras, his composure cracking visibly as he began to speak. My name is Charles Dunham. 30 years ago, I abandoned my pregnant girlfriend because she was black and I was a coward. The child she bore, the son I rejected, stands beside me today. His voice broke as he continued. His name is Sam Miller and I owe him a lifetime of apologies. The statement exploded across social media within minutes. By nightfall, it was the lead story on every major news network. Charles Dunham, tech titan and corporate icon, exposed not just as a racist, but as a man who had rejected and later humiliated his own biological son. The fallout was swift and merciless. Pinnacle Tech's stock plummeted. Partners and clients began distancing themselves from the company. Protesters gathered outside headquarters in growing numbers. And in the midst of it all, Sam Miller stood firm, his father's words echoing in his memory. You were born to rise. 3 days after the confrontation at the airfield, as Sam was leaving his apartment for work, he found Jordan waiting for him. "Did you see the news?" Jordan asked excitedly. "They've arrested Dunham, securities fraud, corporate tax evasion, and they're reopening the investigation into your mother's death." Sam nodded, absorbing the information. "And Pinnacle?" "The board has called an emergency meeting. Word is they're looking for new leadership." Jordan studied his friend's face. "How do you feel?" Sam considered the question carefully. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of revelation and confrontation. He had discovered his origins, faced his biological father, and exposed decades of deception. But underneath it all, there was something else, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since James Miller's death. "I feel like I'm finally standing on solid ground," he said honestly, "like I know who I am." Together, they walked toward the towering glass headquarters of Pinnacle Tech, where reporters and protesters still gathered. Sam looked up at the building where he had spent months cleaning bathrooms and emptying trash, where Charles Dunham had tried to break his spirit. "We finally made it, Dad," he said softly, speaking to the memory of James Miller, the man who had taught him that true strength wasn't about power, but about doing what was right, even when it cost you everything. The Pinnacle Tech headquarters buzzed with unusual energy. 3 weeks had passed since Charles Dunham's public confession and subsequent arrest. The company existed in a strange limbo, damaged but not destroyed, wounded but not fatally. Sam stood in the main lobby, no longer wearing a janitor's uniform. After everything that had happened, he had expected to be fired or pushed out. Instead, the interim management team had placed him on paid administrative leave while the situation was resolved. "Mr. Miller?" A woman in a tailored suit approached. "Him." "The board is ready to see you now." Sam followed her to the elevator, riding silently to the top floor where the executive boardroom occupied the northeast corner of the building. The view of the city skyline was spectacular, but Sam barely noticed as he entered the room where 12 people sat around a massive table. "Mr. Miller, thank you for coming," said William Barrett, the interim CEO. "Please, have a seat." Sam sat down, feeling oddly calm. Whatever happened in this room, his life had already changed irrevocably. "We'll get straight to the point," Barrett continued. "The events of the past month have been unprecedented in Pinnacle's history. Charles Dunham's actions have damaged this company severely. Our stock is down 40%, we've lost major clients, and our public reputation is in tatters." Murmurs of agreement circled the table. "However," Barrett said, "crisis also presents opportunity. Pinnacle needs to chart a new course, one that acknowledges past wrongs while moving decisively toward a more ethical future." Sam waited, wondering where this was heading. "We've spent the past week considering our options," Barrett explained, "and we've reached a decision that may surprise you." He slid a document across the table. "This is our proposed settlement offer." Sam picked up the paper, scanning the terms. The company was offering him $5 million in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement and his resignation from Pinnacle. "You want me to go away quietly," Sam summarized, placing the document back on the table. "We're offering you financial security for life," Barrett corrected. "Most people would consider that a win." "I'm not most people," Sam replied calmly, "and money isn't what I'm after." "Then what do you want, Mr. Miller?" asked an older woman at the far end of the table. Sam considered the question carefully. What did he want? Revenge? Justice? A chance to destroy the company that had humiliated him? None of those felt right. "I want to make sure nothing like this happens again," he said finally. "Not to me, not to anyone." "Noble sentiments," Barrett said with a hint of impatience. "But practically speaking," Sam interrupted, "I want Pinnacle to establish a foundation in my adoptive father's name." James Miller believed in education as a pathway to equality. The foundation would provide scholarships for underprivileged youth, especially those from the foster system like I was. The board members exchanged glances. "That could be arranged," Barrett said cautiously. "In addition to your settlement, of course." I don't want your settlement, Sam said. I want the $5 million to fund the foundation, and I want oversight to ensure it's used properly. You're turning down $5 million? Another board member sounded incredulous. Money comes and goes, Sam replied, thinking of his adoptive father's modest but content life. Legacy lasts. As the board members huddled in whispered consultation, the door to the boardroom opened. A tall black man in a perfectly tailored suit entered, followed by two younger executives. Sorry I'm late, he said, taking an empty seat at the table. Traffic was a nightmare. Mr. Miller, this is Theodore Washington, Barrett explained, CEO of Horizon Investments. Sam recognized the name immediately. Horizon was a major investment firm known for backing tech companies with strong ethical standards. Mr. Washington has a proposal that might interest you, Barrett continued, looking uncomfortable. Theodore Washington smiled warmly at Sam. I've been following your story with great interest, Mr. Miller. What happened to you was inexcusable, but your response has been extraordinary. Thank you, Sam said cautiously. Horizon is considering a significant investment in Pinnacle, Washington explained. Enough to stabilize the company and begin rebuilding its reputation. But we have conditions. What conditions? Sam asked. First, a complete restructuring of leadership. Many of the executives who enabled Dunham's behavior need to go. Washington's voice was pleasant but firm. Second, a comprehensive review of hiring and promotion practices with measurable targets for diversity and inclusion. Sam nodded, impressed. And third, Washington continued, we want you involved. Me? Sam was genuinely surprised. Doing what? Leading a new division focused on ethics, diversity, and corporate accountability, Washington said. You would report directly to the board, with real authority to implement change. The offer was unexpected, almost overwhelming. Sam's mind raced with possibilities. From janitor to executive in a matter of weeks, it seemed impossible. I don't have the qualifications, he said honestly. I never even finished college. You have something more valuable than degrees, Washington replied. Moral clarity, integrity, and the kind of lived experience that Pinnacle desperately needs right now. Sam looked around the boardroom, at the faces watching him expectantly. How many of these people had walked past him daily when he was cleaning? Their offices never bothering to learn his name? I need time to consider this, he said finally. Of course, Washington agreed. But don't take too long. The window for transformational change doesn't stay open forever. That evening, Sam drove to the small cemetery where James Miller was buried. The grave was simple. Just a modest headstone with his adoptive father's name, the dates of his birth and death, and a single line, teacher, father, friend. Sam sat on the grass beside the grave, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. I wish you were here, Dad, he said softly. I could use your advice right about now. The cemetery remained silent, but Sam could almost hear his father's calm voice. What does your heart tell you, son? Sam smiled, remembering how James had guided him through difficult decisions in the past, always asking questions, never dictating answers, teaching him to trust his own judgment. His phone buzzed with an incoming text from Jordan. How did the board meeting go? Instead of replying immediately, Sam drove to the rundown neighborhood where he'd grown up. The streets were familiar but viewed through new eyes. Children played basketball on a cracked court. Teenagers huddled on stoops, their futures as uncertain as his had once been. Sam parked outside a community center where James had volunteered for years. Inside, a classroom of kids worked intently at computers, supervised by a tired-looking teacher. Can I help you? The teacher asked as Sam lingered in the doorway. Just looking, Sam replied. My father used to volunteer here. James Miller? The teacher's face brightened. You must be Sam. James talked about you all the time. He did? Constantly. Said you were going to do great things someday. The teacher glanced around the classroom. We sure could use another volunteer like him. These kids need mentors who understand where they're coming from. Sam watched the children typing laboriously, their young faces intent. Some of them reminded him of himself at that age, full of potential, but lacking opportunity and guidance. His decision crystallized in that moment. He could take the money and disappear. He could even accept the executive position and focus on his own advancement. But neither path would honor James Miller's legacy. Sam knew what he had to do. The next morning, he returned to Pinnacle headquarters for a meeting with Theodore Washington and the board. His proposal was simple but ambitious. He would accept the leadership position, but with specific conditions. The James Miller Foundation needs to be our top priority, he explained. Not just a PR gesture, but a real commitment to transforming lives. I want 10% of Pinnacle's annual profits, dedicated to educational initiatives for the next decade. Washington nodded approvingly. Ambitious but doable. What else? A complete overhaul of hiring practices, starting with the maintenance and support staff. Living wages, clear advancement paths, educational benefits. Sam's voice grew stronger as he continued. And I want Jordan Taylor brought back, with a promotion and back pay. He risked everything to help expose the truth. The negotiations continued for hours, with Sam standing firm on his key points while showing flexibility on others. By afternoon, they had reached an agreement that satisfied all parties. You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Miller, Washington said, with respect as they shook hands afterward. Your father would be proud. Which one? Sam asked with a small smile. The one who taught you your values, Washington replied without hesitation. Over the following weeks, Sam worked tirelessly to establish the James Miller Foundation. He reached out to community leaders, educational experts, and former students of his adoptive father, building a network of support for the initiative. Meanwhile, he reconnected with his mother's side of the family, aunts, uncles, and cousins, who had never known what happened to Catherine Reynolds' child. Their welcome was emotional and healing, filling in pieces of his identity that had been missing for 30 years. His Aunt Marie, Catherine's sister, broke down in tears when they first met. You have her eyes, she said, touching his face gently, and her stubborn chin. Tell me about her, Sam asked, eager to know the woman who had given him life. She was brilliant, Marie said, showing him photographs and mementos from Catherine's short life. Top of her class at Stanford, she wanted to be a lawyer, to fight for civil rights. What happened when she got pregnant with me? Marie's expression darkened. The Dunhams happened. They threatened her, tried to pay her off. When she refused to give you up quietly, they became dangerous. Do you think they were responsible for the accident? Sam asked, the question that had haunted him for weeks. Catherine called me the night before she died, Marie said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She was scared, said she had evidence of something illegal the Dunhams had done and was going to use it as leverage to get you back. She swallowed hard. The next day her car went off that bridge. Police called it an accident, but nobody who knew Catherine believed it. The investigation into Catherine's death had been reopened, but after 30 years, evidence was scarce. Charles Dunham maintained that he had only suspected his parents' involvement after the fact, never having direct knowledge of their actions. Whether justice would ever be served remained uncertain, but Sam found some peace in knowing that his mother had loved him, had fought for him until her final day. On the 6-month anniversary of James Miller's death, Sam visited his grave again, this time bringing framed photos of the foundation's first scholarship recipients, 5 teenagers from the foster system who were now headed to college. I think we're doing good work, Dad, he said, arranging the photos against the headstone. Just like you taught me. As he stood to leave, he noticed a familiar figure waiting respectfully at a distance. Jordan approached as Sam waved him over. How's the new company coming along? Sam asked. Jordan grinned proudly. We just secured our first major client. Turns out ethical tech solutions are in high demand these days. After leaving Pinnacle, Jordan had started his own tech firm, with Sam as his first investor. The company specialized in developing software that helped organizations identify and address discriminatory patterns in hiring and promotion. We're changing things, Sam, Jordan said as they walked back to their cars. Slowly, but it's happening. Sam nodded. thinking of how far they had both come in less than a year. My father used to say that real change happens one person at a time, one decision at a time. Smart man, Jordan observed. The best, Sam agreed. 1 year after Charles Dunham's arrest, Sam sat in his office at Pinnacle Tech, reviewing a detailed financial audit. What had begun as a routine review had uncovered something unexpected, a complex network of offshore accounts connected to the Dunham family. These date back decades, explained Natalie Wilson, Pinnacle's new chief financial officer. They were expertly hidden, but the pattern is clear. Money was being funneled through shell companies, then used to influence politicians, judges, even journalists. Sam studied the documents carefully. How deep does this go? We've only scratched the surface, Natalie admitted. But what we've found suggests a systematic effort to build influence and evade accountability, not just for business purposes, for personal protection as well. Sam's thoughts immediately went to his mother's suspicious death. Could these accounts contain evidence connecting the Dunhams to what happened to Catherine Reynolds? I want a full investigation, he decided, no matter where it leads or who it implicates. Natalie hesitated. Sam, this could open Pandora's box. Some of these transactions implicate people still in positions of power. Are you sure you want to pursue this? Sam thought of his father, James Miller, and the quiet integrity that had defined his life. He thought of his mother, fighting alone against a powerful family that had seen her as expendable. I'm sure, he said firmly. The truth matters, wherever it leads us. The investigation proceeded quietly over the next few months, led by a specialized forensic accounting team. Their findings were more disturbing than anyone had anticipated: evidence of judicial bribes, blackmail payments, and possible connections to Catherine Reynolds' death. When the full report landed on Sam's desk, he faced a difficult decision. Making these findings public could destabilize Pinnacle just as the company was recovering. It could endanger the James Miller Foundation and the good work it had begun. But keeping silent would mean allowing powerful people to escape accountability for decades of corruption and possibly murder. Sam called an emergency meeting with Theodore, Washington, and the board of directors. This is a moral crossroads for Pinnacle, he told them, presenting the evidence they had gathered. We can bury this information to protect the company's stability, or we can choose transparency, whatever the consequences. The boardroom erupted in debate. Some directors argued passionately for discretion, citing fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Others insisted that true transformation required complete honesty about the past. Theodore Washington listened to all sides before addressing the group. When Horizon invested in Pinnacle, he said calmly, we weren't just betting on a company. We were betting on a vision of corporate responsibility. If we abandoned that vision at the first real test, what was the point? His words shifted the atmosphere in the room. One by one, the directors agreed to support full disclosure of their findings. Sam organized what the media later called a Truth Commission, a public forum where former employees, whistleblowers, and victims of the Dunham's corruption could testify freely. The hearings were live-streamed, creating a powerful record of decades of misconduct. For 3 days, Sam listened as people shared their stories. Some had been fired for reporting discrimination. Others had been threatened into silence. A former police detective revealed how the investigation into Catherine Reynolds' accident had been deliberately mishandled after pressure from influential people. The final testimony came from Charles Dunham himself, appearing via video link from prison. His face was gaunt, his former arrogance replaced by a haunted expression. I built this company on a foundation of lies, he admitted. Not just lies about my son, but lies about who I was, what I valued. He paused, struggling visibly with his emotions. The truth is, I knew about my parents' involvement in Catherine's death. Not the details, but enough. And I chose to protect them, to protect myself, rather than seek justice for the mother of my child. His confession sent shockwaves through the business community. The revelation that a celebrated CEO had been complicit in covering up his ex-girlfriend's death was unprecedented, even in an era of corporate scandals. In the aftermath, something remarkable happened. Instead of collapsing under the weight of these revelations, Pinnacle began to transform. The company's radical transparency became a model for corporate accountability. Applications for employment soared, especially from women and minorities who saw Pinnacle as a place where their voices would be valued. 6 months after the hearings, Sam received a visitor he hadn't expected, Charles Dunham's mother, Margaret. In her 80s now, she still carried herself with the rigid posture of old money and privilege. "My grandson," she said when Sam entered the visitor's room of his office. "I should have acknowledged you long ago." Sam remained standing. "Why, are you here, Mrs. Dunham?" "To give you something that belongs to you." She placed a small box on the table between them. "Your mother's things, the items she had with her when she died." Sam opened the box carefully. Inside were a few personal effects: Catherine's wallet, a watch, a small notebook filled with her handwriting. "You kept these all these years?" he asked. "My husband did," Margaret replied. "As insurance, I suppose. In case questions were ever raised." "Did you know what he was planning to do to her?" Margaret's eyes flicked away momentarily. "I suspected, but I chose not to ask questions." Her hands trembled slightly. "It's a particular kind of sin, to suspect evil and deliberately remain ignorant." Sam studied the woman who was, biologically, his grandmother. She represented everything his adoptive father had taught him to question: wealth used as a shield against accountability, privilege mistaken for virtue. "Is there anything else you want to tell me?" he asked. "Just this," she said, rising to leave. "Charles was never the same after what happened to Catherine. He became harder, colder. Perhaps that's punishment enough." "That's for the justice system to decide," Sam replied. "Not me." After she left, Sam examined the items in the box more closely. The notebook contained Catherine's thoughts and plans, including notes about her pregnancy and hopes for her child. The last entry, dated the day before her death, read, "I will not let them erase him. My son deserves to know who he is, where he comes from. Tomorrow, I fight for our future." Sam closed the notebook gently, feeling a connection to his mother that transcended the years of separation. She had fought for him until the end. A year later, Sam stood at a podium in the auditorium of his old high school. Behind him, a newly dedicated library bore the name James Miller Memorial Library. Before him sat the first 100 recipients of James Miller Foundation scholarships, young people from challenging backgrounds who now had a chance at higher education. "My father believed that education was the great equalizer," Sam told my audience. "He believed that knowledge, combined with compassion, could transform lives and communities." From his seat in the front row, Jordan gave him an encouraging nod. "Each of you has a story," Sam continued. "Each of you has faced obstacles that might have stopped you from being here today. But like my father taught me, it's not about where you start. It's about how you choose to rise above your circumstances." After the ceremony, Sam visited his father's grave as he did every month. This time, he brought a framed photograph of the scholarship recipients standing in front of the new library. "We did it, Dad," he said, placing the photo beside the headstone. "Your legacy lives on." As he stood there in the quiet cemetery, Sam thought about the extraordinary journey of the past 2 years. From janitor to executive, from a man denied bereavement leave to one leading a foundation that would change countless lives. On the horizon, the sun was rising, painting the sky with hope. A new dawn, indeed. He traced the inscription on his father's headstone. "He taught me how to be a man the world could never break." "Thank you," Sam whispered, his heart full. "For everything. What would you sacrifice to uncover the truth about your past, even if it meant destroying everything you thought you knew?" Sam Miller's journey from invisible janitor to a man who changed corporate America reminds us that dignity can never be taken, only surrendered. Like and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to remain invisible in an unjust world.